What if I told you that the very thing you call worry is not real in the way you think it is? What if I said it is more like a shadow? It moves when you move. It grows when the light is behind you. And yet, if you turn around and face it directly, it disappears. For thousands of years, Buddhism has taught that worry is not protection, not love, not responsibility. It is a habit of the untrained mind. But before we dive into ancient wisdom, let us slow down and look honestly at how worry shows up in our everyday lives. Picture this. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house is quiet, but your mind is a storm. You replay the conversation you had yesterday, analyzing every word. You imagine your doctor calling with bad news, though no test has even been taken. You picture bills piling up, your children struggling, your own body failing. Nothing is happening in the room, yet your heart beats as if you are in danger. That is worry. It is not life attacking you. It is your mind attacking itself. Now, here's the strange part. Most of us believe worry is necessary. We think if we worry enough, we'll be prepared. If we stay up late turning possibilities over in our minds, will somehow prevent disaster. Worry feels like insurance, like a badge of caring. A parent says, "I only worry because I love my child." A worker says, "I only worry because I take my job seriously." A retiree says, "I only worry because I want to stay healthy." But is it true? Or is worry simply stealing our sleep, draining our joy, and weakening our bodies while giving nothing back in return? I remember once speaking with an elderly man named Robert. He was 75, retired, and every evening he sat by the window with a cup of tea. But his eyes were never on the sunset. They were on his fears. He worried his pension would run out, though he had more than enough savings. He worried his children would abandon him, though they called every week. He worried about illnesses he never had. And finally he told me, "I wasted years of my retirement worrying about the future, only to realize the future never came the way I imagined." His life was safe. His family was kind. But his mind had been living in storms. And maybe you know that feeling. Because in truth, worry is democratic. It doesn't care if you're young or old, rich or poor. Students worry about exams. Parents worry about children. Professionals worry about careers. Seniors worry about health. Different stories, same pattern. The mind imagining pain before it arrives. Buddhism has a word for this. Dukkha, suffering, dissatisfaction. And it teaches that much of our suffering is self-created. Not from what is happening now, but from what might happen later. Worry lives in the future, and by living there, it steals us from the only time life actually exists, the present. But let's not just speak philosophically. Let's bring in science. Psychologists call worry catastrophic thinking. Neuroscientists point to the amygdala, the brain's fear center, which lights up when we imagine threats, even fake ones. Research shows that 85% of the things we worry about never happen. And of the small percentage that do, most are far less painful than our imagination predicted. In other words, worry is not a prophet. It is a liar. Yet, why do we keep listening to it? Because worry disguises itself. It says, "I'm here to protect you. If you think long enough, you'll be safe." But in reality, worry doesn't protect. It paralyzes. It doesn't prepare. It poisons. It doesn't love. It clings. Think of a parent waiting for their teenager to come home. It's 11 p.m., then midnight, then 1 in the morning. The parent paces, checks the window, imagines car accidents, strangers, disasters. The child finally walks in, safe, happy, smiling. The parent collapses with relief. But notice, the worry didn't keep the child safe. It only tortured the parent. The love was real, but the worry was not love. It was fear wearing a mask. The Buddha used a famous metaphor. Imagine being struck by an arrow. It hurts. That's the first arrow, life's unavoidable pain. But then imagine shooting yourself a second arrow, replaying the pain, imagining more pain, fearing future arrows. That is worry. The second arrow is optional, but most of us carry quivers full of them, firing all day and night at ourselves. I once had a friend who worried about every email at work. If her boss didn't reply in an hour, she imagined she was in trouble. If a project was late, she imagined losing her job. Her body reacted with racing heart, sweaty palms, migraines. One day, she finally received feedback. Her boss said, "You're doing great. Stop doubting yourself." She laughed, then cried, realizing she had suffered more from the imagined second arrows than from anything real. But let's pause here. If worry is so destructive, why do we cling to it? Why is it so universal? The answer is attachment. We cling to outcomes. Success, health, reputation, relationships. We grip them tightly, afraid to lose them. And the tighter we grip, the more we fear, and the more worry grows. Buddhism calls this upadana, clinging, grasping. It is the soil where worry grows. Imagine holding a handful of sand. If you hold it gently, most of it stays in your hand. If you squeeze tightly, it slips through your fingers. Worry is that squeezing. The more we cling, the less peace we hold. Now here's the good news. If worry is something we create, then it's something we can uncreate. We don't have to accept it as destiny. Through mindfulness, through presence, through letting go, we can loosen our grip. Picture sitting quietly, noticing your breath. A worry arises. What if tomorrow is hard? Instead of chasing it, you label it, "This is worry." You breathe. You let it pass, like a cloud drifting across the sky. You don't fight it. You don't feed it. And in that moment, you reclaim peace. Not by fixing tomorrow, but by living in today. That is the invitation of Buddhism. And that is where our journey begins. Let's take a step back and ask, if worry is so painful, why do we all carry like a family heirloom? Why do parents pass it to children? Teachers to students, leaders to followers. The answer is simple yet unsettling. Worry is cultural training. We are taught to worry. We inherit it, the way we inherit language, customs, and beliefs. And because it is passed down, it feels natural, almost noble. But what if it's not? What if it's simply conditioning that we can unlearn? Think about the phrases you've heard since childhood. Don't be careless. Plan for the worst. If you don't worry, you don't care. These words may sound wise, but they are seeds planted in young minds. Over time, those seeds grow into vines of anxiety wrapping around the heart. A child hears a parent worry constantly about money, safety, grades. The child learns, to be good, I must worry too. And so the cycle continues. I once met a young woman named Sarah. She told me, "In my family, worry is a love language. My mother calls me 3 times a day to ask if I'm eating, if I lock the door, if I'm safe. If she doesn't ask, I feel she doesn't care." But then Sarah paused and admitted, "At the same time, her worry makes me anxious. I feel suffocated." Do you see the trap? Worry presented as love actually created stress for both of them. In the West, worry often wears the mask of productivity. Society praises a worker who stays up all night, consumed with anxiety about deadlines. We admire the student who can't sleep before exams, calling it dedication. In many workplaces, the person who worries the most about problems is labeled responsible, while the calm person is seen as careless. Anxiety becomes currency. Stress becomes a status symbol. In the East, worry often wears a mask of duty. Children are taught that if they don't worry about their parents, they are unfilial. Parents are taught that if they don't worry about their children, they are neglectful. Communities sometimes equate calmness with indifference, as if peace is laziness. And so generations compete in who can worry more. But Buddhism challenges this. The Buddha never said worry is proof of care. He said compassion is care. Wisdom is care. Presence is care. Worry is not love. It is attachment laced with fear. Let me share a story of two fathers. The first father constantly worried about his son's future. He reminded him daily, study harder, you'll fail otherwise. Be careful. The world is dangerous. Don't trust anyone. His son grew anxious, hesitant, full of self-doubt. The second father cared deeply too, but he trusted. He told his son, do your best. I'll support you. If you fall, I'll help you stand. His son grew confident, resilient, calm. Both fathers loved, but only one confused worry with love. Which child lived lighter? Now let's bring in psychology. Researchers have studied helicopter parenting, the style of constantly worrying, hovering, controlling children. Studies show that such children often develop higher anxiety and lower independence. Why? Because they learn that the world is dangerous and that they cannot trust themselves. Worry breeds worry. This is cultural inheritance at work. At the same time, cross-cultural studies reveal differences. Western societies often link self-worth to achievement. So worry focuses on performance, grades, careers, finances. Eastern societies often link worth to relationships. So worry focuses on family, safety, reputation, harmony. Different directions, same route. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of impermanence. Buddhism names this root tanha, craving, desire, the craving for security, for permanence, for control. Worry grows from craving like weeds from soil. The more we crave certainty, the more we worry when life doesn't cooperate. I remember once sitting with a group of college students from different countries. An American student said, I worry I'll never be successful enough. A Japanese student said, I worry I'll disappoint my parents. An Indian student said, I worry I won't fulfill my duty. Different words, same experience. Worry as cultural conditioning. But here's the question we rarely ask. Does worry actually fulfill these cultural values? Does a parent's worry truly keep children safe? Does the worker's worry truly create productivity? Does the student's worry truly bring success? Or are we just exhausting ourselves with rituals of fear? Let's consider an experiment. Imagine two employees. Both face the same project deadline. One spends weeks in quiet, focused preparation, calmly working each day. The other spends weeks in panic, sleepless nights, obsessive what-ifs. At the deadline, both deliver project, but one is calm and healthy. The other is exhausted and sick. Did worry help, or did it simply drain? This is where Buddhism speaks with radical clarity. It says worry is not useful. It is not a sign of responsibility. It is self-created suffering. And here's the shocking part. It is optional. But letting go of cultural training is not easy. If you grew up in a family where worry equals love, releasing worry feels like betraying love. If you work in a company where worry equals diligence, releasing worry feels like betraying duty. So the practice is subtle. To hold love without worry, to hold responsibility without fear, to hold ambition without obsession. The Buddha's teachings remind us it is possible. He lived in a culture full of fear, fear of hunger, war, loss. Yet he taught peace. He did not say, stop caring. He said, stop clinging. Because clinging is not care, it is fear. Now, let's look at science again. Psychologists have found that people who practice mindfulness are not less responsible. They are often more responsible. Why? Because they act from clarity instead of panic. They respond instead of react. They work with focus instead of exhaustion. In other words, letting go of worry doesn't make you careless. It makes you effective. Consider a surgeon. Would you want your surgeon to be consumed with worry, shaking before each cut? Or would you want them calm, steady, present? Calmness is not laziness. Calmness is power. I once heard a Zen teacher say, "A worried mind is like a trembling hand carrying water. Most of it spills. A steady mind carries it safely." Which one do you want to live with? And so, when we look at cultural training, we must ask ourselves, do I want to inherit this legacy of worry? Do I want to pass it to my children? Do I want to live my life equating stress with virtue? Or do I want to break the chain? Breaking the chain starts with awareness. You begin to notice the moments when culture whispers, "If you don't worry, you don't care." You smile gently and answer, "No, I care enough to be present. I care enough to act with clarity, not panic." This is not rebellion against your family or society. It is compassion. Because when you free yourself from cultural worry, you free those around you too. Your calm becomes their calm. Your presence becomes their safety. Your trust becomes their trust. I once spoke to a mother who shifted this way. She said, "At first, I thought if I stopped worrying, I'd be a bad mom. But when I learned mindfulness, I realized my children didn't need my worry. They needed my peace. My calm gave them more safety than my panic ever did." That is the transformation we are seeking. To stop glorifying worry as virtue and to start honoring peace as power. Imagine this scene. You are walking through a forest and suddenly a hunter's arrow pierces your shoulder. The pain is sharp, undeniable. That is the first arrow, the real, unavoidable pain of life. But now, instead of tending to your wound, you pick up a bow and shoot yourself again. You add another arrow, deeper and longer. Why? Because your mind whispers, "What if it gets worse? What if I never heal? What if this kills me?" You keep shooting yourself with arrows of thought until the imagined pain is greater than the real one. This metaphor, given by the Buddha more than 2,500 years ago, explains why human suffering feels heavier than it needs to be. The first arrow is life itself, loss, illness, rejection, aging. The second arrow is our reaction, worry, fear, anger, regret. And while the first arrow is beyond our control, the second arrow is optional. Yet most of us fire the second arrow again and again, without even realizing it. Let's make this concrete. Suppose you receive a medical diagnosis. The first arrow is a fact itself. Your body is facing an illness. The second arrow comes when your mind races. "I won't survive. I'll lose everything. My family will suffer. My life is over." The diagnosis is one arrow. The 1,000 scenarios in your head, those are self-inflicted. And strangely, those imagined fears often hurt more than the illness itself. Or imagine you send a message to someone you care about, and hours pass without reply. The first arrow is the silence. The second arrow is the story. "They must hate me. I must have done something wrong." Maybe they're gone forever. By the time they finally respond with casual, "Sorry, I was busy," you've already bled yourself dry with arrows that never existed. Think about heartbreak. A relationship ends. That ending is painful. Yes, the first arrow. But then comes a spiral. "I'll never be loved again. I'm worthless. I'll always be alone." Those thoughts are the second arrow, and they carve deeper wounds than the breakup itself. Even in small things, the second arrow shows up. You stub your toe. That's the first arrow. You curse yourself. "I'm so clumsy. I always ruin things. My day is destroyed." That's the second arrow. The toe may heal in a day, but the anger can linger for weeks. Science now confirms this. Psychologists call it rumination, the habit of replaying pain in the mind. Brain scans show that when people ruminate, their stress response fires as if the event were happening again. The body doesn't know the difference between a memory and a current danger. So when you shoot yourself with second arrows, your heart rate rises, your blood pressure spikes, your immune system weakens, even though the original threat is gone. I once knew a man named David who lost his job during a company downsizing. That was the first arrow, sudden, painful, real. But the second arrow almost destroyed him. He told himself, "I'm a failure. I'll never recover. My family will lose respect for me." For months, he spiraled into depression, not because of the job loss itself, but because of the story he told himself about it. Years later, when he found new work and stability, he admitted the job loss hurt. But what truly crushed me were the arrows I kept firing at myself. Let's turn to relationships again. A woman named Maria shared that her partner left suddenly. The first arrow was grief, but she added second arrows daily, stalking his social media, replaying every conversation, imagining what she should have done differently. She said, "I was bleeding from wounds that didn't exist anymore. The breakup was one wound. My thoughts turned it into 1,000. The Buddha's teaching is liberating here. He didn't promise to remove the first arrows. No philosophy, no religion, no wealth can protect us from the reality of loss, sickness, aging, death. But he gave us a way to avoid the second arrow. And that changes everything. Think of it like this. Life will always rain on us sometimes. That's the first arrow. But do we choose to stand in the storm without an umbrella, blaming the sky? Or do we learn to carry shelter, to dry ourselves quickly, to keep walking without multiplying our misery? That is the practice. Here's a modern analogy. Imagine your phone buzzes with bad news. That's the first arrow. But then you keep refreshing, reading comments, replaying it in your head for hours. That's the second arrow. Technology has trained us to fire arrows faster than ever. Yet mindfulness teaches us, pause, breathe, put down the bow. Even physical pain offers an example. In mindfulness-based pain management programs, patients learn to distinguish between pain and suffering. Pain is the first arrow. The stories, "This will last forever, I can't handle it, I'm doomed," are the second arrows. When patients learn to sit with pain without adding stories, their suffering decreases dramatically, even if the pain remains. Now, how do we stop shooting second arrows? The answer is awareness. The moment you notice a thought arising, "What if this ruins me?" you can label it. This is a second arrow. That simple act of naming creates space. Suddenly you're not lost inside the arrow, you're watching it. And anything you can watch, you can choose not to fire. I once tried this after a harsh argument with a friend. The first arrow was their criticism. It stung. But the second arrow began when I told myself, "They never respected me. I'm a terrible friend. This relationship is broken forever." As soon as I named it second arrow, something shifted. I still felt the sting of the first arrow, but I stopped adding fuel. Within a day, we reconciled. Without that awareness, I might have burned the whole friendship with arrows of my own making. This practice takes time. Some days, we'll still shoot the second arrow before we realize. Let's do a small guided reflection. Think of something painful in your life recently. Maybe a mistake, a loss, a rejection. That's the first arrow. Now ask yourself, what stories did I add? Did I tell myself it means I'm unworthy, doomed, unloved? Those are second arrows. Feel the difference between the two. Notice how much of the suffering came not from reality, but from imagination. This recognition is the first step toward liberation. And here's the most empowering part. When we stop shooting second arrows, we gain energy to heal the first. If you're not bleeding from imaginary wounds, you could actually tend to the real one. If you lose a job, instead of spiraling in shame, you can look for new opportunities. If a relationship ends, instead of drowning in self-blame, you can grieve honestly and move forward. The absence of second arrows makes resilience possible. The Buddha's teaching of the two arrows is not just philosophy. It is a daily practical guide. Each time you notice your mind replaying, exaggerating, catastrophizing, pause. Smile gently. Say, "Ah, here comes a second arrow." Then breathe, then let it pass. Over time, you discover a stunning truth. The first arrows of life may never stop, but the second arrows, those were always in your hand, and you can choose to put the bow down. For centuries, Buddhism has spoken of the restless mind, a mind caught in worry, craving, and illusion. But today, with brain scans, psychological studies, and medical trials, science is finally catching up to what monks have practiced on cushions for thousands of years. The bridge between Buddhism and neuroscience is more than poetic. It is measurable, testable, undeniable. Let's begin with the brain itself. When you worry, a small almond-shaped structure deep inside your skull, called the amygdala, lights up. This is your brain's fear center, evolved to keep you safe from predators. Long ago, if you heard rustling in the bushes, the amygdala fired. Danger, prepare to run. But in modern life, the same system responds not just to lions, but to late emails, financial uncertainty, or a doctor's appointment next month. The amygdala cannot tell the difference between a tiger and a tax form. So it floods your body with stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline. Your heart races, your breathing shortens, your muscles tighten. And here's the tragedy. This storm often erupts not from reality, but from imagination. That is Buddhism's second arrow, seen under a microscope. Now, consider the default mode network, or DMN, a network of brain regions that activates when your mind wanders. Neuroscientists discovered that when we're not present, the DMN spins stories about the past and the future. Sounds familiar? That's exactly what Buddhism calls samsara, the cycle of endless thought, craving, aversion. Studies show that people with overactive DMNs experience more anxiety, depression, and dissatisfaction. Worry, in other words, is the brain's default when left untrained. But here's the hopeful part. When people practice mindfulness, paying attention to breath, sensations, present moment, the DMN quiets. The amygdala shrinks in size and reactivity. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for clear thinking and wise decisions, strengthens. In simple terms, meditation rewires your brain away from worry toward peace. What the Buddha taught as stilling the monkey mind. Science now calls neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change with practice. Let's look at real data. In a famous study at the University of Massachusetts, patients with chronic pain were put through an 8-week mindfulness program. They still felt physical pain, the first arrow, but their suffering dropped dramatically. Why? Because they stopped firing second arrows of fear and resistance. Brain scans showed less activity in the amygdala, more regulation from cortex. Buddhism's parable of the two arrows became a medical fact. Another study at Stanford found that just 2 weeks of daily meditation reduced worry and improved sleep in people with high anxiety. Participants reported feeling less trapped in what-if spirals. Their bodies showed lower levels of stress hormones. In other words, the ancient teaching, stay present, translated into measurable health benefits. And it's not just the brain. Worry affects the entire body. Long-term worry increases risk of heart disease, weakens the immune system, disrupts digestion, accelerates aging at the cellular level. Scientists measure this using telomeres, the protective caps on DNA. Chronic stress shortens them, leading to faster aging. Meditation, gratitude, presence, they slow the shortening, protecting health. Buddhism's call to release clinging is not just spiritual advice, it's biological survival. Now let's tell a story. A woman named Linda participated in a mindfulness-based stress reduction program. For years, she suffered from insomnia, lie awake every night consumed by worry. Doctors prescribed pills, but the cycle continued. After 8 weeks of meditation, something shifted. The worries still come, she said, but now I see them as clouds, not storms. They pass. For the first time in decades, she slept peacefully. Science confirmed her body's cortisol levels dropped. Buddhism confirmed she had stopped feeding the second arrow. Think of it this way. Buddhism says the mind is like a wild elephant. Untamed, it stomps and destroys. Tamed, it becomes powerful and wise. Science says the same. An untrained brain falls into worry loops. A trained brain develops resilience. Both traditions agree. Training is possible. Transformation is real. What about children? A study on school programs teaching mindfulness to kids found that students who practiced simple breathing and presence exercises reported less anxiety during exams. Their grades even improved. Isn't that remarkable? The very thing some parents think, if my child doesn't worry, they won't succeed, turns out backwards. Children who worry less succeed more. Calmness breeds clarity. Here's another fascinating overlap. Buddhism teaches impermanence. Everything changes. Nothing lasts forever. Neuroscience shows the same in brain cells. Synapses are constantly rewiring. Emotions that feel permanent, fear, worry, are actually chemical events lasting seconds or minutes unless we feed them with stories. What feels eternal is, in fact, impermanent. This is not just philosophy. It is chemistry. So, how do we bring this into daily life? Let's create a small experiment right now. Close your eyes. Notice your breath. Think of a worry. Maybe it's about money, health, or a relationship. Feel the tension in your body. Now breathe slowly. Name the thought. This is worry. Notice how even labeling it reduces its grip. That is your prefrontal cortex engaging, calming the amygdala. That is Buddhism and neuroscience shaking hands inside your very skull. What we learn from this bridge is profound. Worry is not your destiny. It is a habit of the mind, reinforced by culture and biology, but not permanent. With practice, the brain can unlearn it. The mind can release it. The body can heal from it. Imagine a society that understood this. Imagine schools teaching children how to observe thoughts instead of drowning in them. Imagine hospitals prescribing meditation alongside medicine. Imagine workplaces rewarding presence instead of panic. That is not fantasy. It is happening now. And it began with insight spoken under a tree in India 2.5 millennia ago. Buddhism said, worry is illusion. Be present. Science now says, worry is neural habit. Train your brain. Different languages, one truth. So next time your mind begins to spiral, remember, your amygdala is firing, but you are not your amygdala. Your DMN is wandering, but you are not your DMN. You are the awareness noticing both. And in that awareness, you can put down the bow, stop firing second arrows, and return to the only moment that matters, this one. Let's slow down together. Up until now, we've been talking about worry as an idea, a cultural habit, a brain pattern, a Buddhist teaching. But philosophy and science only take us so far. To really understand worry, you must experience it directly. You must notice how it rises in your body, how it clouds your mind, how it shapes your choices. And then, most importantly, you must see that you are not worry. You are the observer of worry. So in this part, I want to guide you through practice. Don't just listen, participate. Let your body, your breath, your awareness be involved. Even if you've never meditated before, don't worry. This is simple. This is natural. This is for everyone. Step 1, arriving in the present. Wherever you are right now, sitting on a couch, walking in a park, maybe even lying in bed with your phone. Pause. Feel the weight of your body. Notice the ground beneath you, the chair holding you, the breath moving in and out. You don't need to change anything. Just notice. In Buddhism, this is called arriving. Before you can release worry, you must first arrive where you are. You cannot fight worry in the future. You can only meet it here, in this breath. So take one slow inhale. Count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold gently, then exhale to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Feel your shoulders drop. Feel your chest soften. This is presence. Step 2, naming the worry. Now, bring to mind something that has been worrying you lately. Don't choose the heaviest one if it feels overwhelming. Just something real. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your job. Maybe it's someone you love. Let it come gently. Notice what happens in your body as you think of it. Does your chest tighten? Does your stomach knot? Do your hands fidget? This is the physical imprint of worry. It's not just in your mind. It lives in your body. Now, here's the practice. Name it silently. Say to yourself, this is worry. Not, I am worried. Just, this is worry. That small shift changes everything. Because suddenly, you are not inside the worry. You are watching it. And what you can watch, you can release. This technique is not new. Modern psychology calls it labeling. Neuroscience shows that when we label an emotion, the amygdala calms down and the prefrontal cortex engages. Buddhism calls it mindfulness, simply seeing clearly. Different words, same truth. Step 3, observing without judgment. As you sit with this worry, don't fight it. Don't scold yourself. Don't say, I shouldn't feel this. That only adds another layer of worry, a third arrow. Instead, observe like you watch clouds drifting across the sky. They form, they move, they fade. Imagine you're sitting by a river. Each thought is a leaf floating by. You don't have to jump in and grab the leaf. You just watch it pass. Some leaves are small, some are heavy, some are dark, but all keep flowing downstream. Worry is like that. It only stays when we grab it. So right now, notice your worry. Watch it. Breathe. Let it float by. Step 4, returning to the body. Now bring your attention back to your body. Notice your feet touching the ground. Notice your hands resting gently. Notice the rise and fall of your belly as you breathe. Buddhism teaches that the body is an anchor. When the mind spins stories, the body brings us home. The sensation of breath, the touch of the floor, these are real. They exist now. The worry? That is about a future that may never arrive. So by returning to the body, you return to reality. Step 5, practicing release. Here's a visualization. Picture your worry as a stone in your hand. You've been gripping it tightly, so tightly your hand aches. Now, on your next exhale, imagine unclenching your fingers. Let the stone rest on your palm. You're not throwing it away. You're simply not holding it so tight. Feel the difference in your hand. That's the difference in your mind when you release worry. The worry may still exist, but your grip does not. And without your grip, it loses its power. Story, Anna's first practice. Let me share a story. Anna was a nurse who worked long night shifts. She worried constantly about patients, about her family, about her own health. One day, she joined a mindfulness workshop. The teacher guided her through the exact practice we're doing now, noticing, naming, releasing. At first, she said, I can't do it. The worries keep coming. The teacher replied, yes, they will come. The practice is not to stop them. The practice is to notice them. So she tried again. The worry came. What if my patient dies? She named it. This is worry. She breathed. She let it pass. Another came. What if I get sick? Again, she named it. Slowly, she realized the worries were like waves. They kept rising, but they also kept fading if she didn't chase them. Months later, Anna said, "My life is still stressful, but now I feel like I'm standing on the shore watching waves instead of drowning in them." That is the power of noticing. Step 6, gratitude as antidote. Now, after noticing and naming your worry, try this. Shift to gratitude. Ask yourself, what is real and good in this moment? Maybe it's the breath you're taking. Maybe it's the roof over your head. Maybe the friend who cares. Gratitude and worry cannot live in the same moment. One dissolves the other. Gratitude roots you in what is instead of what if. So silently name one thing you're grateful for right now. Hold it gently. Let it warm your chest. This is how you replace arrows with light. Step 7. Close in the practice. Take one more slow breath. Inhale, hold, exhale. Place your hand gently on your chest. Whisper to yourself, I am here. I am safe. I am enough. That's it. That's the practice. Not complicated. Not mystical. Simply noticing, naming, observing, releasing. And every time you do it, you fire fewer second arrows. You reclaim more peace. Reflection after practice. Now, reflect for a moment. How do you feel compared to 10 minutes ago? Maybe lighter, maybe calmer, maybe just 5% more peaceful. That's enough. Because peace doesn't arrive in one grand moment. It arrives breath by breath, practice by practice. The Buddha once said, little by little, a person becomes good, as a water jar is filled by drops. The same is true of peace. Drop by drop, moment by moment, you train your mind away from worry. Modern science agrees. Studies show that even 5 minutes of daily mindfulness lowers anxiety over time. It's not about perfection. It's about repetition. The brain changes through practice, not theory. So don't wait for a crisis. Practice noticing worry in small ways. Waiting in line, notice impatience. Name it. Stuck in traffic, notice frustration. Name it. Awake at 2 a.m., notice fear. Name it. Each small moment is training. Each small victory adds up. The practice of noticing worry is simple, but it's revolutionary. Because once you can notice, you can choose. You can choose not to follow every fearful thought. You can choose to breathe instead of spiral. You can choose presence instead of panic. And in that choice lies freedom. We've explored teaching, science, and even guided practice. But sometimes what moves us most are real stories. Flesh and blood lives transformed by letting go of worry. Because while theory speaks to the mind, stories speak to the heart. And it is in the heart where Evelyn was 68 years old when she first confessed to her daughter, I don't sleep anymore. She lay awake each night, haunted by thoughts of illness, bills, the uncertainty of old age. She called them her nighty defer what ifs. Her daughter invited her to a senior meditation group at the community center. Evelyn resisted at first. Meditation is for monks, not for grandmothers like me. But one evening she tried. The instructor guided her to notice her breath, name her worries, and let them drift like clouds. At first, the monsters screamed louder, but gradually they softened. 3 months later, Evelyn said, I still have worries, but they visit like guests, not like monsters. I greet them, then I let them. Michael was a successful executive, always on the move. His identity was built on worry about competitors' profits, deadlines. Stress was his fuel, until one day his body collapsed, a heart attack at 52. During recovery, a doctor recommended a mindfulness retreat. Michael scoffed but eventually agreed. On retreat, he discovered something shocking. Silence, For the first time in decades, he sat without multitasking. Worry stormed his mind, but the teachers guided him to observe, label, breathe. Months later, Michael restructured his life. He still ran his business, but with calmer presence. He said, "I thought worry kept me sharp. I was wrong. Clarity keeps me sharp. Worry almost killed me. Presence saved me." A teenager's exam fear. Not all stories come from elders. Emma, a 16-year-old student, was paralyzed by exam anxiety. Each test felt like life or death. Her parents told her, "Worry means you're serious." But worry only froze her mind. Her school introduced a mindfulness program. She learned to breathe before tests, to notice her racing heart, to say, "This is worry, not truth." Her grades improved, not because she studied harder, but because she studied calmer. She later told her teacher, "I learned that worrying about exams wastes the energy I need to pass them." A lesson some people never learn until much later in life. A monk's gentle reminder. Even monks are not free from worry. A novice once admitted to his master, "I worry about my family, my future, even my practice. I feel like I failed Buddhism itself." The master smiled. "That is the second arrow. You think worry is proof of care, but true care is presence. Sit with your breath. Be here. That is enough." The novice practiced daily. He noticed that when he stopped labeling himself a failure, his compassion deepened. He visited his family with calm presence instead of anxious advice. He said, "I realized they needed my listening, not my worrying." Research story, cancer patients and mindfulness. In a study at Harvard, cancer patients were taught mindfulness meditation. Their diagnoses were heavy first arrows. But through practice, they reported less anxiety, less depression, and even less physical pain. One patient said, "I can't change the fact I'm sick, but I can change whether I live my remaining days in fear or in peace." This echoes Buddhism perfectly. The arrow may pierce, but we don't have to pierce ourselves again. A mother's release. Sophia was a single mother working 2 jobs. Her constant refrain was, "If I don't worry, who will?" But her health began to crumble. A friend introduced her to mindful parenting workshops. There, she realized her children didn't need her worry. They needed her calm. So she tried a new experiment. Each time she felt panic, she placed a hand on her heart and whispered, "I am here. I am safe. My children are safe." Her kids noticed the difference. They said, "Mom smiles more now." That simple shift changed the entire home. Lessons from these stories. What do these lives show us? That worry is universal, but so is transformation. A grandmother, a veteran, a businessman, a teenager, a mother, all discovered the same truth. Worry is optional. The first arrow hurts, but the second arrow is in our hands. And the path to release is not exotic. It doesn't require becoming a monk or moving to a mountain. It requires awareness, presence, and practice. The Buddha taught with stories like these, parables of ordinary people transformed. And modern science confirms with studies and data. But the deepest confirmation comes from lived experience. When your chest softens after years of tightening, when your sleep returns after nights of fear, when your smile reappears after months of despair, that is proof enough. Closing reflection. So ask yourself, which story is yours? Are you like Evelyn, haunted at night? Like John, replaying the past? Like Michael, fueled by stress until collapse? Like Emma, paralyzed by exams? Like Sophia, thinking worry equals love? Whichever your story, the invitation is the same. Notice the arrows. Stop shooting yourself with more. Replace worry with presence. Replace fear with breath. Replace clinging with compassion. Because as these stories show, Transformation is not just possible, it is waiting. Subscribe to the channel so we can keep exploring these teachings together.